Welcome to the Total Soccer Show and our latest foray into the listener questions mailbag. On this episode, we're looking at the players who picked the wrong national team, we're looking at the best mid-season managerial switches, and we're putting Riqui Puig in the USMNT. Or are we? My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, it's a power trio. Joe Lowry's here. Hello, Joe.
Hey, can we just expedite the Riqui Puig thing a few years past whatever bureaucratic processes need to happen and get him as the Christian Pulisic replacement? That feels good. Can we let's get that on the double?
Sure. As someone on a work visa, I can assure you, immigration is moving very quickly right now.
Yeah,
Joe.
super easy, super simple.
I'm sure we can expedite that very quickly indeed.
100%.
No issues at all. I see on that
Good.
one. Excellent. Yeah,
Problem
glad
solved.
we got that sorted. Graham Ruthven, hello.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. What other MLS players are we getting to play for the US? That what's the guy for Inter Miami who's quite good?
Kramaski, but he can't make it because of the
U20s in
that's
June.
it.
No, I was thinking about the guy who wears number 10. Can't quite remember his name. Let's get him in. I've heard he's quite good.
No.
One-time switch, still an option there? Yeah.
I mean, FIFA lets the US do whatever they want. They've got a league with no relegation. They've got like all these different concessions. So sure, I'm sure they'll let Messi play for the US.
This is true. You can do it, Leo. Just stop complaining about the refs. How about that? Is that a condition? Maybe.
And that's maybe
We'll
how
see.
they get them, yeah.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. Before we get into our listener questions, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show is the best way to support this here endeavour. Bonus episodes, bonus video, and access to our Discord server where all the cool kids are hanging out. The most recent episode of TSS Plus, our bonus episodes, getting into the USMNT roster for the Gold Cup. Excellent conversation is had there. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show if you'd like to check that out and chat about it on our Discord with us. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get to the listener questions that have hit our mailbag. We're going to start off with Joey Jadlowski, who's asked this one. What is the best example of someone who, from a career standpoint, chose the wrong national team? I'm thinking of players who either filed a one-time switch or were cap-tied to a country's national team where they could have achieved more on-field success by choosing a different nation to represent. Joe, I'm going to say a name that might be upsetting to you.
Oh,
You ready?
Okay.
He's going to go straight for it.
Yep.
Anthony Robinson.
that's not where I thought
you were going.
No.
Whoa, Graham, synergy today. Wow, that's unbelievable.
Because we sit in the same room. We're in the same sauna. So
Yeah, right.
Move up.
Yeah.
We are indeed.
If you could stop squeezing my hand quite so tightly, that would be
I feel like
Never.
at this point, Anthony Robinson could have had a pretty good shot at being a starting left back for England.
Yep.
The place where he is born and raised, of course. And, could have had that spot locked up from Luke Shaw or who else would it be? Chilwell? I'm not sure.
Born and raised, but not the nation that embraced him. Overlooked constantly.
Yeah, sad.
Missed opportunity, certainly, for England. Yeah, I mean, Jetta Robinson's a very good shout. It certainly makes me think. I do think that it wouldn't have been quite as clear for him to make that burst onto the scene. And part of his career trajectory has been based on his success with the U.S. men's national team. So I don't think it would have been quite so cut and dry as it is with him with the U.S. Because if you end up third on the England squad at left back, that still carries a lot of weight and probably still carries a little bit more weight than the USMNT look. But it's still not quite guaranteed that he would be where he is without some of his international windows raising his profile. Still, it's a great shout. I thought you were going Christian Pulisic to Croatia, which Christian Pulisic would get minutes for Croatia.
Oh, that's a good one.
Wait, where did you think he was going, Graham?
I thought he was going to go straight for Erling Haaland to England.
Oh, all right. Yeah, Erling Haaland is on top of my list. I'll take it there after Pulisic. Pulisic, I think, would get real minutes for Croatia and would have been a part of a team that made deeper World Cup runs than the U.S. has or is looking like it will in the near future. Haaland's on my list, though, ultimately. No disrespect to Norway. They are not England. The gap between Norway and England is quite large, probably a little larger than the gap between the U.S. and England. Haaland's a superstar, and when international windows come around, he gets buried narratively by the other stuff that's happening. That wouldn't be the case if he was playing for England. An Erling Haaland, Harry Kane front two is something that I need in my life. But
No, I don't. I don't need that. That's the moment I give up on football forever, frankly.
Why?
Because England might win something.
Understood. But Haaland, I think, is probably the best answer here, although I do have some others, but I want to hear Graham's thoughts.
Yeah, I think so. Haaland's top of my list. There's a couple other candidates here. So I think Achraf Hakimi has to be up there. One of the best right backs in the world, has been for years. Spain are desperate for the long-term replacement for Dani Carvajal, and unlike Real Madrid, they can't just go out and sign Trent Alexander-Arnold. So Hakimi, born in Madrid. I don't think I had it in my mind that he'd played for youth teams for Spain. I don't think he did. I think he's always been he's played for Morocco's youth teams all the way through. So it was maybe always natural that he was going to play for their senior team. A couple other suggestions. Riyad Mahrez is potentially another one. Born in France but plays for Algeria. Obviously, France have so much strength in their squad and have done for like the last 15 years for the time that Mahrez has been at the top of the game. I still think Riyad Mahrez plays a relatively important role for a France team, particularly when he's at the peak of his powers for Man City, even for Leicester City. And obviously that coincides with France making World Cup finals and being one of the best teams in the world and winning the World Cup in 2018. So Riyad Mahrez could have been a part of that. And then another French example, Kalidou Koulibaly, again born and raised in France but played for Senegal. I think he would have played a bunch for France in central defence. Again, they've got incredible strength, so it might not have been the case that he was first choice. Keep in mind, Aymeric Laporte was so overlooked by France that he went and played for another country. So he might not have been a first team player, but I still think he gets at least 20 caps for a France team that is at that time one of the best in the world.
Is Laporte the opposite answer to this? He's made the best possible career switch by going to Spain. I
think so, or maybe Diego Costa is another example where he is, and Brazil fans were furious with him for turning his back on Brazil. I think he played a couple friendly games for Brazil as well. There's pictures of him in Brazil shirts or Brazil kit, I'm sure. He goes and plays for Spain, and he is the centre forward at that time that Spain otherwise lacked, and won Euros with Spain. I can't quite remember what he won with Spain, but they were certainly very successful when he was a forward. And Brazil at that same time lacked a centre forward in his mould. So, lost a centre forward, one gained a centre forward.
There you go. Yeah, Joe, I think Erling Haaland probably is the most pertinent answer here, isn't it? But obviously he was born and spent his formative years in England, but identity-wise, he's Norway, right? It's hard to separate him from being a Norwegian robot. So I'm not sure he would actually agree with our sentiment personally.
Yeah. And I guess formative is maybe doing some heavy lifting there. I think Haaland moved to Norway when he was 3. So I think he's talking about this
very formative
before.
years, those first 3 years.
Yeah, probably are the most formative in a lot of ways, but maybe not exactly what
he was
you
literally
intended
formed
there.
in that country, so...
Literally formed. It's a great shout. I think Haaland's come out and said before, I'm Norwegian. I live my life in Norway. And that's
look
why...
at him. Look at him. He is literally like the peninsula of Norway with hair on top.
He is Europe's longest coastline.
Oh, that's exceptional, Graham. We're not telling any of these players how to pick what they want to do with their lives, right? But it is a fun thought exercise. My whole list was Erling Haaland on top of Jedi and Pulisic. Lionel Messi with Spain came across my mind because not that he hasn't had a lot of success with Argentina and he doesn't need the notoriety. He would have won stuff way sooner with Spain than he did with Argentina. I had Aubameyang on my list where he could have played for a number of different countries, France, Italy, Spain. I don't think he would have thrived for them quite like he did for Gabon, but he would have been in the spotlight for longer. And then the wild card deep cut that I can never unthink is Jonathan Gonzalez. Who it was McKennie, it was Adams, and it was Jonathan Gonzalez coming up together. And all sort of were the next hope for the U.S. in midfield following the World Cup disaster in 2017. He had represented the U.S. at youth level and then now switches to Mexico and has 3 caps for Mexico to his name. I think if he'd made a different choice, his career possibly could have turned out differently. He's also a super limited player and kind of is just a worse Tyler Adams. But still, I think things would have gone differently for Gonzalez if he'd made a different choice. Again, not telling him he should have done that at all. But fun what ifs in all this equation.
Indeed. Graham, do you remember Adnan Januzaj, who broke through at Manchester United?
When so many countries to pick from.
Yeah, I believe it was 6 countries he could have made his pick from. He played nationally for Belgium in the end. I wonder
Kosovo, Albania,
England
was another one. England, of course. A couple others in there that I've forgotten.
Yeah, but maybe if he'd taken a different path, sliding door style, things could have been so different.
If he hadn't played for Manchester United, things might have been different. He's the one, and we've spoken about this previously, but whenever it comes up in Listener Questions or whatever, he was the one that I was convinced was going to be like a Ballon d'Or worthy player. And obviously Manchester United weren't the 2025 Manchester United where everything they touch turns to poop at that point. They were only a year out from Sir Alex Ferguson, but yeah, I was badly wrong about that.
Yeah, there we go. Joe Jadlowski, thank you very much indeed for your question. Nick Price has come in with this one. Will Riqui Puig be starting for the USMNT at the 2030 World Cup? How would he stack up against the rest of the talent pool? He's a top 5 player in MLS, but would that guarantee him a starting spot? Is it possible, asked Nick, for him to become naturalised if he stays in MLS, like Lucho Costa is rumoured to do? And could he file that one-time switch? We go now to Joe Lowery for his perspective on this question.
As far as I can tell, yes. The latter part of that question is possible. He could eventually gain citizenship in the United States, and that would then make him eligible for the U.S. men's national team. Lucho Acosta is going through this process. Lucho Acosta also moved to Mexico partway through that 5 years and is still somehow involved in this process. That I don't understand. I don't think anybody does. Puig has been in the U.S. since August of 2022 when he signed for the Galaxy. So he could be a U.S. citizen theoretically after that 5-year mark has happened in 2027. Riqui Puig is a great player, and he would make this U.S. team better, assuming you could nail all those bureaucratic things. There are some challenges here. I do want to maybe lead with those. He'll be 30 by then, which I don't think is going to have a huge impact on his play style. Although he is sort of frenetic in how he moves on the ball, he'll lose a little bit of that. But he's still going to be an offensive genius in 2030, just like he is in 2025. But there is a difference in the U.S. men's national team relative to the teams they play against at the highest levels and the teams that Riqui Puig played against with Barcelona and the teams that he played against with the LA Galaxy. His defensive effort could be a little bit of a problem for the U.S. because unlike Barcelona and unlike the LA Galaxy, who dominate the ball against teams, not this year's Galaxy, think last year for the LA Galaxy, the U.S. can't dominate games against everybody they play, like the Galaxy can, or like FC Barcelona certainly could. And I know Puig didn't cut it at Barcelona at the end of the day, but a lot of that was because he wasn't willing to do a lot of the defensive work. And for the Galaxy, he just doesn't have to because they either have the ball or they have other players to go and do a bunch of that dirty work. Because the U.S. can't dominate games in the same way, he'll have more stress, and that puts more stress on everybody for the U.S. to defend. And Puig just doesn't do that. And I don't know why we would think he would do that at age 30 when he doesn't do it at age 25. My answer is still yes. Like, if you can get Puig into the U.S., you do it because he's a player that you just don't have straight up and have never produced. But it's not as if it's, oh, wow, the U.S. is going to be really, really dangerous with him on the field. In a way, yes, but they're also going to be worse in another way. I'd still do it, though.
Joe, have you seen Puig's FB Ref scout report?
This lives rent-free in my head, Graham.
It's art. It's art. All the attacking and creative stuff is full-on green, as high up as you can go. Couldn't be any more impressive. And then all the defensive stuff is red or
Deep
non-existent
red.
because he gives you nothing on that side of the ball. So I take your point. I think he is the sort of player that the US is desperately lacking in midfield. Lots of touches of the ball, creativity, ability to get in between the lines. So with that in mind, I would rebuild my midfield unit to get Riqui Puig in there. So the defensive stuff would be an issue. I would have, and look, this is one of these things that's probably never going to be tested, so I can say whatever I want here. I would have like Adams and Johnny Cardoso to try and compensate for what you would lack, what Riqui Puig wouldn't give you, and then you just give him the freedom to go and do what he wants in the final third of the pitch or through the midfield into the final third of the pitch. So that's how much I would be willing to change the US team to get Riqui Puig in there, because I do think, I mean, look, they're not going to win the World Cup if you get Riqui Puig in that team, but I do think he would have the potential to move the needle for this team.
I totally agree. Like, it's at least worth an experiment if you get to the point where you actually have this option. There's just no way I don't call Riqui Puig into this team because, I mean, at the moment, who is the US's luxury player? It's Christian Pulisic, right? Although maybe he's taken that to a new level this summer, I suppose. But it's Christian Pulisic. Christian Pulisic should do some defensive dirty work for Riqui Puig, right? Whether he would or not, I don't know. But yeah, you have to accommodate someone like Puig because he is so absurdly good at the stuff that he's good at. The U.S. just can't touch anything like that. The hurdle is still that other teams have players who can do what Riqui Puig does on the ball and also defend, and then they have other players who also do those things more than just one that they're having to naturalize and help him become a U.S. citizen. So still some objects in the path for the U.S. in this instance, but would it be good for the U.S.? Probably. Would it be fun? You bet it would be.
It would be fun indeed. And you mentioned, Joe, he'd be 30 by the 2030 World Cup. Adnan Januzaj, currently 30. So if he has the same level of impact on the international game that Adnan Januzaj is currently having, both fellow geniuses on the ball, we're good.
It's a life-changing stuff.
At Las Palmas on loan from Sevilla.
Oh, he's having a lovely time on the island, Graham. It's great there.
Yeah,
he's probably on the beach.
He probably is.
On the volcanic sands of...
Like Christian Pulisic. who is such a luxury player now that he's going to experience the luxuries of a Four Seasons resort this summer instead of playing at the Gold Cup.
Very nice, as he should. It was a White Lotus actually. He's checked into, isn't it? Same thing.
Well,
Same thing.
He
Same
clearly hasn't watched the series. Watch it for Greg.
Nick Price, thank you very much indeed for your question. We take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking about the FA Cup. We're talking about mid-season manager switches and much more. Do join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. Let's go to a question from our Discord from Empty Rainier Wolfcastle. The goggles, they do nothing. Best quote ever. Would the FA Cup be better if Champions League teams weren't allowed to compete? It would reduce fixture congestion for Champions League teams and make the tournament more winnable for other teams and therefore more compelling to most fans. It's an interesting concept here, Graham. I will note the last 2 winners of the FA Cup were not Champions League teams. 3 of the last 5 winners of the FA Cup were not Champions League teams. Palace, Man United, Leicester City. But the Champions,
that was one I was forgetting.
Yeah. Yep. Champions League team is usually in the final, to be fair, and they do kind of make it to the latter stages. I'm against this one, Graham, because I think it would be the beginning of the end for the competition if you don't have the biggest teams in it.
Yeah, I'm not taking this. I am open to doing something with the League Cup, the Carabao Cup, because England is increasingly an anomaly in having 2 cup competitions. So France got rid of theirs not so long ago. Italy, as far as I'm aware, don't have one. Spain doesn't have one. They both have, Italy and Spain, they both have Super Cups that are taken more seriously than the Community Shield in England, but they only add 3 games onto the calendar. They have a semi-final and a final. I would honestly get rid of the League Cup and possibly make the Community Shield a mini tournament at the start of the season. Maybe play it abroad if we wanted to go down that path. Alternatively, maybe if you are in Europe, you don't play in the League Cup, and we get rid of some fixture congestion for the top teams there. But then that, to your point, Ryan, that potentially turns it into something that doesn't get a whole lot of mainstream coverage. And what is the purpose of it? But I don't know if I'm just high on Palace winning it at the weekend, but I kind of feel like the FA Cup's been given a little bit of extra life in recent years by the fact that the middle class of the Premier League is getting better and better. So you look at obviously Palace winning it, but you look at the semi-finals this season as well. Villa, Palace, Nottingham Forest, all taking this competition seriously and all good teams. So like the spectacle was good in those games because they are high quality teams. That middle class is getting better. And so my prediction is we're going to see more upsets like Palace beating City because, as I say, those
cup
mid-tier
sets, Graham.
Cup sets, of course. Sorry, I should have used the correct term. Those teams are getting better and better, and I think that's worth protecting. So I guess I feel better about the FA Cup than I have in a while.
Okay. Joe Larry, how do you feel about it? I think Graham's onto something here with taking the League Cup and maybe dissecting that rather than the Football Association Cup.
Can I get the TLDR on why both of those things exist, Graham?
That's a good question. Politically, the League Cup was a concession back when the Premier League, or it's been, obviously it goes back longer than that, but the reason it stuck around was the League Cup was a concession to the EFL, who were losing the Premier League or the top division as a breakaway league, and so they said, well, okay, you'll have control over this cup competition that will have the best teams in England competing in it. But to be honest, Joe, there's not much of an answer other than it's just always been there.
No, that's a good answer. The reality is it's a little dumb. But I mean, I understand it. It just is bizarre that those competitions both exist. As far as the FA Cup goes, I want the Giants in it. It makes me more interested, in watching it. And I mean, I hear the person asking this question on making the tournament
Rainy Wolfcastle, Joe.
Yeah,
please.
Nailed it. I hear you on making the tournament more winnable for other teams. That's cool, right? It's fun to see other teams win stuff. But I don't want these cup competitions to lose their legitimacy by moving away from those top flight teams competing in it, right? If you take out the Champions League teams within the FA Cup and Crystal Palace win it, feels like it kind of needs a little bit of an asterisk, right? I mean, it's just not the same. I want the upsets to be truly special. I think that's what makes these tournaments so compelling, is that you do have David versus Goliath, and if you take out a good chunk of the Goliaths, it's just not quite as fun anymore. So I suppose it depends on what you're looking for from a tournament, and wanting to see a wider variety of winners, I think, is a noble goal. But I think I want to see special moments more than I want to see a wide variety of winners. And I think the current format of the FA Cup gives you more of that than this proposed change.
Ryan, as a lower league, a fan of a lower league team, how do you regard I don't even know what it's called these days, but it used to be called the Johnson's Paint Trophy,
EFL
which
Trophy,
is the what's it called?
EFL Trophy, I believe.
The EFL Trophy, right? That's it. They've changed the name a few times over the years. But how do you regard that? Because obviously that is kind of similar in principle to what's been discussed here with taking like the big teams out of a competition. Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you treat it seriously, or is it just kind of like a sideshow?
It's a bit of a sideshow, I suppose, because I think the bigger teams, and that's the one with the under 21 teams in it and stuff as well, isn't it? It's a bit.
Yeah, I think so.
Bit of a weird one, and we would very much take the FA Cup seriously because the gate receipts. So we got a game against Newcastle, and that's game changing for a League Two team to get half the gate from St James's Park, for example. And I think that kind of thing makes it really important for lower level teams because it's just a big financial boost that they would never get otherwise, and it's a big risk reward thing in that respect. But for the EFL Trophy, it's just another thing.
Yeah, I mean we have the same thing here, which is called the Challenge Cup. If you make the final, great. It's a great day out. Stirling Albion haven't made the final in like 30 years, so it just kind of I don't even go to the Challenge Cup games because. Yeah, you don't have that carrot of you might get. A couple of years ago, Albion in the Scottish Cup got a game against Rangers at Ibrox, and that was really special. We got smashed 4-0, but yeah, I think you keep the big teams in these competitions.
Yeah, indeed. All right, NT Rainier Wolfcastle, thank you very much indeed for your question. We go for another question now from the Discord, from Discord Stu. So much Simpsons in this segment. Wonderful stuff. Is Dortmund's mid-season manager switch, sacking Nuri Sahin and hiring Niko Kovac, the most successful mid-season sacking and hiring in recent memory? Are there others you'd put at the same level? Joe, I think there's another one this season I would put at the same level. I'm thinking Claudio Ranieri at Roma this season, who took over in November. Roma, I believe, according to my notes, were 12th. They were pretty down and out at that point. They were on their third manager after Daniel De Rossi and Ivan Juric. They're in 5th now, going into the final round of Serie A this weekend, possibly getting Champions League qualification if results go their way. So I would say that's a pretty tremendous, very modern example. I've got a few others, but
Yes.
Joe, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a great shout, Ryan. The Roma one is a phenomenal choice. The Kovac one is really good. It's certainly top tier. I think the one in most recent memory that takes the cake is Thomas Tuchel with Chelsea. And what's that?
That's the one. That's the big one.
Yeah, I think so. Graham looks like he's got another answer. 19 Premier League games for Tuchel with Chelsea in the 2020-2021 season. He comes in January, has 11 wins, 5 draws, 3 losses in that stretch. So Kovac hasn't beat on points per game. If you go and like do the math there, Kovac had 9 wins, 1 draw, and 4 losses in the last Bundesliga stretch in his 14 games. But Tuchel goes and makes the FA Cup final with Chelsea and then wins the Champions League, which is about as good as it gets as far as a midseason turnaround goes. That swap, bringing Tuchel in and sort of restructuring elements of that team, and then them hitting form at the right time. It's a legendary midseason turnaround to have it end with the most important trophy in the club game on the planet. It's pretty hard to beat, so I went with Tuchel as my top pick.
Yeah, he's absolutely on my list. The other Chelsea example, which is similar, is Roberto Di Matteo, who follows a similar trajectory, appointed interim manager in March 2012 after Andre Villas-Boas, there's a blast from the past, gets fired. Chelsea were 5th at that time, really struggling. They had lost the first leg of a Champions League last 16 tie to 3-1 to Napoli. Looked like they were going out of that competition. Di Matteo comes in. He was the assistant, obviously a former Chelsea player as well. They overturn that deficit against Napoli in the second leg. They win 4-1. Actually finished 6th in the Premier League, so Tuchel I still think is a better example because it suggested that there was a kind of more meaningful turnaround. But Di Matteo wins the FA Cup, makes the final as Tuchel did, but actually wins that final, and then famously wins the Champions League. So that one wasn't bad either. I've got a couple other suggestions. Zinedine Zidane did similar, replaces Rafa Benitez in January 2016. Within 4 months, he's taken Real Madrid to the Champions League. This is maybe recency bias, but Oliver Glasner is another one that came to mind. He comes in February of last season. Palace were just 3 points above the relegation zone at that point. They went on this incredible winning run to end the season. They end up finishing 10th that season. My answer, though, is a certain Unai Emery. So when he comes in midway through the season, Villa are firmly in a relegation battle. They were 3 points above the bottom 3. He comes in, they finish 7th in that season, and look, I'm cheating a little bit because I know I'm supposed to be looking at a single season, but I'm going to extrapolate it out a little bit here. Following season, they finish 4th, qualify for the Champions League. They could still qualify for the Champions League for a second successive season this weekend, having made a real run in the Champions League this season where they pushed who I think are probably going to be the eventual winners, PSG, all the way in that quarter-final tie. And the reason I just put him top of my list is that all the clubs that we've mentioned so far, Real Madrid, Chelsea, even Dortmund with Kovac, they all did things that, should have been possible for those clubs. It's not out of the question for Chelsea to win a Champions League or Dortmund to finish in the top 4 of the Bundesliga, certainly. Whereas Unai Emery has completely changed the landscape for Villa to the point where you now consider them a member of the Premier League elite.
When you said there's one clear manager I'm going to nominate, Graham, I was hoping you were going to say Sam Allardyce. Has there not been...
The great job he did
right?
at Leeds, yeah,
Well,
the fantastic job he did at Leeds United.
I feel like he had a rep for coming in at late stages and saving teams relegation. What, Sunderland, West Ham, maybe? There's a few, right? I didn't think it worked at West Brom, if I remember correctly.
No, so he certainly had that reputation. The last couple, it didn't pan out that way. It felt like it was an unearned reputation where he took West Brom down and then took Leeds United down. But yes, you're right. I think he did save. Yeah, I think you're right with Sunderland and West Ham. I think he did it with him.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you very much, Discord Stu, for your question there. One more quick break. When we come back, we're talking about the Eredivisie and its suitability as a development league for US soccer. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to our listener questions. Almost midlife crisis. Know the feeling. Has contacted us on Discord with this question. Is the Eredivisie a better league for development than Major League Soccer, particularly for American players? Would Pepe have been better off staying within Major League Soccer? Joe, I think this is a theme we touched upon in a recent USMNT Weekly, was it not? Is the Eredivisie a sound betting ground for American players now?
I think it is. I don't think I would say that it is better than MLS in terms of developing American players. I think it's difficult to do a one-size-fits-all, really, at the end of the day, when it comes to destinations and leagues. Even within leagues, team style makes a huge difference. To keep the Ricardo Pepi example, and to even look outside of MLS and the Eredivisie, Pepe's move from Dallas takes him to Augsburg in the Bundesliga. And the Bundesliga, we've talked about it before, has been a pretty good league for young players, for American players. Augsburg were horrible. And Ricardo Pepi never got to touch the ball, and it didn't go well, and he didn't stick around for very long. If he'd moved to another Bundesliga team that wasn't Augsburg, probably would have gone a little bit better for Ricardo Pepi. So I think it is dangerous to make these sorts of league-wide generalizations about player development. With that being said, each league does have a sort of attitude about developing players, and there are some generalizations that I think are helpful and probably accurate. If you're a young U.S. player, you probably don't want to go to England because there's a lot of really good young players there, and they've got a lot of money to go and spend over you. If you're going to the Eredivisie, who, outside of the couple of big clubs, don't have as much money to go and spend over you, if they're bringing you in, it's probably because they really value you. And you're not just one of a half dozen young players that they're bringing in the exact same window, and they're hoping that one of the half dozen actually hits. Even Ajax and PSV, when they go out and sign U.S. players, they are generally doing so with an eye to really putting them on the field and helping them develop. If you're trying to make a quality argument for the Eredivisie being better than MLS, I think it's hard to do. The top teams certainly are, right? Ajax, PSV, Feyenoord, you can probably go down a couple more teams, would crush an MLS. But on balance, Opta has their league rankings. MLS came in, I think this was last year when they published these, as the 9th best league in the world according to Opta. I mean, each company has their own different way of assessing these things. I feel like that's maybe a bit high. But anyway, Opta has MLS as the 9th best league and the Eredivisie as the 13th. Because the middle and bottom of the Eredivisie is really bad. Those teams are really not good. The other challenge, and now I will let someone else speak. The other challenge, and we're seeing this with Malik Tillman, I think, right now, is that if you do make it onto one of the big teams, you're just dominating every single week in league play, right? You are putting up absurd numbers. You're not being tested. The gap between the best and even a mid-table team in the Eredivisie is massive in a way that it's not in Major League Soccer. Malik Tillman was named by Who Scored, and they calculate their player ratings in a pretty rudimentary way. But he was named as the player of the season in the Eredivisie. We've never seen that version of Malik Tillman for the U.S. men's national team. And it could be that he's not as comfortable with the U.S. as he is with PSV. It could be that there are other challenges there. The real answer is that when he plays for PSV, he's playing against guys that aren't very good. And when he's playing for the U.S., it's a lot harder to dominate because you're playing against better players. We see Malik Tillman in the Champions League. He doesn't look like PSV league play Malik Tillman. So you end up with really inflated numbers, and you don't really get tested every week, and I don't think that gives us a real accurate perception of who you are as a player. So there's merit to going in different places depending on the situation, but I think MLS has plenty to offer these kids as well.
All right, Joe, that's a perfectly fair assessment there. So you've highlighted the sort of discrepancy of talent in the Eredivisie. Is there another European league where you think that wouldn't necessarily be a problem? Maybe it is just the Bundesliga and we go back to that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is... I don't know that I have a great answer to that question, frankly. It's not something that I've given a lot of thought to because I don't really think the league generalizations are very helpful. Like, I think it totally depends on the team, on the situation.
Yeah.
I think I have no issue with these players going to the Eredivisie. I really don't. I have no issue with them staying an extra year in Major League Soccer. It just depends on what the situation is. Like, if you tell me Diego Luna is going to go to play for PSV, that'd be pretty fun. That would be a cool move for him. I think that would be a good stop for him. If you tell me that Diego Luna is going to stick around in MLS for another 18 months, I'm probably not thrilled about that because I think he's sort of worked his way beyond what we're seeing from RSL right now, especially as they're really bad. So it really just does depend for me on the situation.
Yeah, I was writing about, I never know how to pronounce their name as a club, but Union Saint-Galoise, who I was writing about them for the newsletter this week, and the Belgian Pro League numbers, development numbers, are really strong, and they take players from more countries around the world than apparently any other league in the world. And I also think it doesn't quite have the top-heavy structure that the Eredivisie has, but the best teams in that league are still playing in the Europa League. They have access to the Champions League, so potentially Belgium, but then the US went down that route with sending players to Belgium, and nobody really came out of the other side beside Mark McKenzie, I guess, has made it into the USMNT. So that hasn't really worked. But I agree with Joe that making the generalisations about leagues, I kind of struggle with that because I think it's just much more dependent on clubs and specific circumstances. I hear all the time that Scotland isn't a good place to develop players, and maybe that's
you could have stopped
true.
That Scotland isn't a good place. Sorry, go on.
Sure. I hear that all the time from Ryan Bailey on this show repeatedly every week. But it worked out pretty well for Virgil van Dijk and Christopher Ayer and Matt O'Reilly and Jeremy Frimpong, who's going to make a move to Liverpool this summer. The common denominator there is they all played for Celtic, and Celtic are an excellent developmental club, so I don't know how much that is down to the league itself. So my advice to players, whether they're American or otherwise, would be to look at the club rather than the league first and foremost. Having said that, the Eredivisie ranks really highly for minutes given to players aged 21 or under, so 27.9% of minutes last season were given to players 21 or under. That ranks the Eredivisie 6th for that metric in the world. And the leagues ahead of them are Slovakia, New Zealand, Ireland, Estonia, and Latvia. So for all intents and purposes, the Eredivisie is the best big league in the world for giving youth opportunities.
Well,
but then I
Latvia.
guess Latvia, yeah, sure. Let's get the USMNT
They didn't get the
to
memo.
Latvia
Yeah.
to develop. I guess it also depends what you want those minutes to give you, right? So with the Eredivisie, I think the idea with it being good for Americans is that sometimes, and look, I'm making sweeping generalizations here, but the idea is that generally maybe Americans sometimes need to add some technicality to their game, and if that is the idea, the Eredivisie ranks third for touches and possession length, according to Analytics FC, behind, just looking through my notes here, La Liga and Liga Portugal. So ranks pretty highly in that regard. If you're an American player who is the stereotypical American hard running, hard effort sort of player, and you want to add a bit of technicality to your game, and you're young enough to do that, then maybe the Eredivisie is the place for you to go.
Okay, great stuff. Almost midlife crisis. Thank you very much indeed for your question. One final one for this episode from Scott Goodhart, who says, I went to a Dortmund game this weekend and was struck by how much bigger the club felt than the city itself. The entire place seemed to revolve around the team. Most supporters, myself included, had travelled in the day before or the day of the match. It got me thinking, says Scott, are there any other clubs where the team feels much bigger than the city? In Dortmund's case, it felt like the club was the city. It's a really good question, Graham. I haven't really considered too much, but now it's got me thinking the best. There's a couple of examples I think I have. The closest example to this and to Dortmund I can think of is Naples, where everything revolves around Napoli. Everything. Every street you go on has a mural of Maradona on it. It seems like the actual city of Naples is not very nice. Like, there's not.
Come on! It's not as if people go there on holiday or anything. Like, it's
you go to Sorrento, you go to surrounding areas. The actual downtown city of Naples is not the best. I think that's probably fair to say. In the
Welcome back to
context of
Ryan Bailey
Italy,
Hates Cities that aren't London, England, and Charlotte, North Carolina. Today's segment is brought to you by...
In the context of
Naples.com.
Italy, Italy has many incredible cities. I would say that, in my opinion, Naples isn't the nicest one, but it is very Napoli-centric, and it's all about that team in that area. The other one I'd say, Graham, and it's one that's probably close to front of mind at the moment, is Bilbao, where I've mentioned here probably deliberately 2 one-team cities here. And Bilbao, it's a very similar vibe where everywhere you go there, it's about the red and white stripes. It's about that sort of Basque mentality, which is insular in its own way, but it's a very important part of their identity.
Yeah.
You go around the shops and the streets in Bilbao, and there's no Barcelona or Real Madrid shirts, which you get in every other Spanish city. Like every other Spanish city, it's very uniquely just about that one club in that city. I'm not saying it's not got anything else to offer necessarily, and the same's for Naples, but it does feel like the one club very much dominates things.
Yeah, I've not been to Bilbao. It's on my list. I have been to Naples, and I think that's probably the correct answer, to be honest, because I've never been to a city. I've been to Dortmund as well. I've not been to a Dortmund game, actually, but I went to obviously I went to a game at the Euros last year, and I also went to a Scotland game there like ages ago. And I know exactly what Scott means. You get off the train and there are big billboards of Dortmund players. In front of the train station, they have the big logo of, Ryan, you might remember this, when Dortmund won the Champions League in 97 or whenever that was, they had like an iconic sponsor on their shirt that was Die Continentale, I think it was. It's like a C, half circle C. Yep. It's really iconic. And they have that in huge permanent letters right at the front of the train station. And I know that's a brand and they'll say, oh, it's sponsorship, but everyone getting off that train thinks of Borussia Dortmund looking at that logo. That's why that's there in that square in front of the train station. So I know exactly what Scott means, but Naples is on another level. You go into a bar, this is not an exaggeration, you go into a bar, there will be Napoli, there'll be a Napoli shirt, there'll be a Napoli scarf, there'll be pictures of players, there'll be something to do with Maradona, maybe now there's something to do with McFratemi. You go to a pizza place, which of course there's many of in Naples, and they'll have pizzas named after players. I know McTominay has one which has square sausage now on it. I was reading about it. They've imported square sausage, so you're welcome, Italy. Naples is... Well, to be fair, Italians love deep frying stuff, so maybe that's a commonality we've got with the Italians. But yeah, Naples. I think Naples is the clear answer here. But another couple of suggestions: Newcastle in the UK. Yeah. I think it helps that St James's Park is right in the middle of the city, so it feels like everything feeds into the stadium. It also helps with, and this is true with Dortmund and Napoli, Naples, I should say, that it is one club city. Newcastle. So in Glasgow, for example, I think it's fair to say, as by anyone's measure, a proper football city, 2 genuinely huge clubs. But because of their rivalry and other stuff associated with the rivalry, you can't really have billboards of players. You go into a pub in Glasgow, and you've got the hardcore pubs that are out in like the supporter areas and out by the stadiums. That'll be Rangers or Celtic bars. You go into a city centre bar in Glasgow, you're not going to get Celtic players or Celtic scarves or Rangers shirts on the wall, because obviously it's a divided city. So I think every example I thought of Newcastle, Naples, I think Marseille is on this list as well. Basically every example that I thought of was a one club city.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. Joe, we presume that Phoenix Rising very much dominate Casa Grande and its surrounding areas.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, when you're at that Grande Sports Complex, like the feeling is just electric of the buzz. It's all there. Yeah, it's funny you take it to Phoenix, Ryan. My experience in all this is zero. Like I've never experienced something like this. I don't think this exists in American soccer. If you live in a market with an American soccer team and you feel this way, let us know on the Discord or let us know on social media, because I really don't think this happens. The thing that I could think of in my life that got closest to this was when I was in Portland. I've been to Portland too. I don't know if that's ever come up before.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I didn't see Graham there, unfortunately. I think he's making it all up. When I was in Portland ahead of MLS Cup in 2021, it felt a little bit like this. Providence Park is situated so well in the city. There's a lot of foot traffic around it. It felt like an event. It felt like it mattered more than anything else that was happening there. I mean, that's not the case always in Portland, right? Even as much as the city of Portland loves the Portland Timbers and the Portland Thorns, you don't see this kind of thing. So, yeah, it's a huge cultural difference between American soccer. It doesn't have the same history and sporting advantages that soccer does in so many other places around the world. It hasn't happened here, at least not that I've seen. So if you feel like it has, let me know, because I'm curious.
Portland is definitely the closest that I've felt in the US. Not that I've been to a few places to watch games in the US, but that was the closest to this that I have felt. But even still, it's just nowhere near the level of Naples or Dortmund. Can I throw out a slightly bold suggestion that I'm not even fully sure that I believe myself, but I'll try and make the case? Barcelona. When I've been to Barcelona, I felt like FC Barcelona has been an ever-present. And obviously that's not a one-club city, it's Espanyol, but it's such a lopsided rivalry that I just feel like everyone in Barcelona is aware that FC Barcelona are the biggest thing about that city. The Camp Nou, well, not now because it's a pile of rubble, but the Camp Nou, I believe, is the most visited tourist attraction in Barcelona. And I just think if you go to Barcelona, you do the tour of the Camp Nou, and that's a big part of your trip to Barcelona.
Graham, is there an ice cream truck at your house?
There is, yeah. I'm trying to speak over the top of it.
If you could grab me a drumstick, Graham, with caramel in the cone, that'd be great.
What do you want? Raspberry Ripple? Or, yeah.
Is your house a tourist attraction? What's happening?
I think so. I can also hear my daughter shouting about it.
They've come to see the hole on the street. Is what's really happened.
Wow, the one day a year when Scotland's warm enough to have an ice cream truck and Graham's inside.
Hey, it's been great weather the last couple of weeks. It's to end tomorrow, so maybe I'll just go and get supplies to the next few weeks from the ice cream truck.
I'd say Barcelona is a good shout, Graham, but I would argue that the city of Barcelona offers.
Yeah, there's lots to offer.
The club isn't the city. Mostly, what else it offers is bachelorette parties and having dinner at 11 p.m.
And being pickpocketed on Las Ramblas.
That's right.
It's a stereotype that actually rings true. I know people that has happened to more than once, actually.
There you go. I think they're doing some tourism protests in Barcelona because it is over touristed, if that's a term. It's not, but you know what I mean. But hey, don't go on the Ramblers.
Not with your wallet.
Scott Goodhart, thank you very much indeed for your question. Thank you to everybody who submitted a question on this here episode. If you'd like to do so, there's a couple of ways to do that. TotalSoccerShow.com/questions is where you could submit one, or you can join TSS Plus on our Patreon, patreon.com/TotalSoccerShow, to leave a question with us on our Discord, have a chat with us too, patreon.com/TotalSoccerShow. Please and thank you. But for now, that is our listener questions. Joe Lowery, thank you very much indeed for your insights as always. My good man.
Hey, thanks, Ryan.
Graham Ruthven, go get yourself an ice cream before it's too late. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ryan Bailey. I will.
And listener, thank you very much for joining us on this intrepid journey. You have yourselves a wonderful weekend. We'll be back on the feed very shortly. But for now, bye.